Welcome to the social roundup with Sala right here on Relax Radio. We are back with something that is important, something that needs to be addressed, and we need to be doing something about it, which is domestic violence during lockdown. Now, if you are someone with some sort of experience, you are someone who has something to share with us, you want to tell us about your experience as well, do comment on our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, as well as YouTube. Tune in with us and tell us what do you think about these topics as well, right? Now, even if you simply have something that you want to talk about, you want us to talk about, do comment. We'd love to give you the content that you are looking for as well, right here on Relax Radio. With that being said, we have something that is important and that needs to be discussed in this time and day, and that is about domestic abuse, right? Now, if you take domestic abuse, we see sometimes we do not know exactly what it means. So we tend to give it definitions in our head. Now, we need to know what domestic abuse is before we talk about it, before we do something about it, right? Now, according to Women's Aid, domestic abuse is given a definition so that people can understand what it really means, right? It is an incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading, and violent behavior, right? And this could include sexual violence, and sometimes, in most cases, it is by a partner or an ex-partner, but also by a family member or a carer, right? This is something very common, especially during lockdown. We've seen a lot of cases come about, and in most cases, we see that women experience this more than men. But again, that does not mean that men don't experience it as well. And we also see that children experience domestic abuse as well, right? And this is again like we've spoken, right? It is not limited to one specific type of abuse, and it includes multiple types of abuse, right? This is including coercive control. It could be emotional and psychological abuse as well. Sometimes we feel like it is not serious enough to be considered domestic abuse, but it is actually not healthy for us. Mental health matters as much as our physical health. So if it is something that where someone is emotionally abusing us, psychologically abusing us, then it's something to think about and something to address, right? Physical and sexual abuse is also domestic violence. Financial or economic abuse, harassment, and stalking, online or digital abuse are also domestic abuse, right? Now, we might think that this doesn't fall under the domestic abuse category, but this is said so, and because it is said so, we can guarantee that this is domestic abuse, and we need to do something about it, right? Now, when in the UK, we've seen that Women's Aid has taken actions to address the COVID-19 victims of domestic abuse as well. So, if you do know someone who is a victim of this situation, and if you are a victim of this situation, please do contact them. Please do take whatever needs to be done to take care of yourself mentally and physically, and do not tolerate abuse, right? Domestic abuse is not something we need to be putting up with, something that we need to be experiencing in our life. It is something, ultimately our home is a place when we need to be feeling safe, right? So if we're not feeling safe at home, then it's something that we need to seriously think about and address. So if you do feel like you are a victim, then do what it takes to take care of yourself, right? Now, warning signs of abuse include withdrawing from others and making excuses not to see friends or family. Now, this doesn't always mean, directly meeting, especially during lockdown, right? This could also mean virtually not talking to your family members or your friends, right? This could also mean that the abuser is becoming controlling with them because they do not want anyone to get to know that they are subjecting the victim to domestic abuse, right? You might also be anxious around your partner, or afraid of your partner if you are being subjected to domestic abuse. So if you see that your friend or sibling or anyone, your parent even, is anxious and scared of their partner, that could possibly mean that they're facing domestic abuse. Having frequent bruises or injuries that they can't lie or explain about, right? Now, this is something that we need to take seriously, because there have been cases where women have, makeup to cover up their bruises and wounds as well, which shouldn't be the case, because this is something that we need to take seriously. If it's getting physical, we know that it's going to, be not a normal thing. It is not something we need to be taking lightly at all, right? Having limited access to money, credit cards, or cars are also a possibility of domestic abuse, because this means that the person is controlling how much of access that the victim has towards financial support, right? Not having money or credit cards or a car could mean that this person doesn't want the victim to escape, right? And that the controller, or rather the person who is domestically abusing the victim, is trying to control their life, right? Showing an extreme change in personality is also a sign of being a victim of domestic abuse. Now, this could mean that, ultimately, with all the negative energy that you are surrounded by, your moods can change. You can become someone who is suppressing and, suppressing their emotions, and not talkative or not energetic or bubbly, or, in general, not a happy person, right? Could be a gloomy person, right? Getting frequent calls from their significant other is also something that you need to think about, because a controller ultimately is trying to be in control of what the victim is doing, which means that they will take calls, they will call them up and check whether, they are doing, they are telling the other person that they're hanging out with about, being domestically abused. So it's something that we need to take very, very seriously, right? Having a partner who has a temper, easily jealous, and very possessive are also signs of someone being domestically abused. Why is this the case? Because if you really think about it, why would someone domestically abuse their partner, right? This could possibly mean that they have anger management issues. This could mean that they're mentally not stable, or they're possessive and jealous of the other people that their partner hangs out with, and so they become so controlling of their life. And this is something that is really toxic. This is not something that needs to be tolerated. And if you're someone who hasn't moved in with your partner, you're early in the relationship, and you see extreme possessive or jealousy symptoms of jealousy, extreme possessiveness, or temper, anger management issues, you need to think about whether you want a future with this partner or not, because it could mean that this partner is going to be unhealthy for you. Why does it matter that we pick a healthy partner for us? Because ultimately we're going to be living with this person, and if this person isn't going to be taking care of you and healthy towards you, then it's definitely not something that you want to be putting up with, right? And it's not something that you want. Ultimately, you don't want to be facing domestic abuse, right? And if you see this person just in clothing that covers them up, long sleeve t-shirts in summer is something for you to think about, because this could possibly mean that this person is hiding bruises from you. This could mean that this person is hiding the fact that they're exposed, they're, subjected to domestic abuse as well, right? So let's just keep this in mind, and let's also keep in mind that it's not just something that is physical, it's verbal, it's sexual, it's emotional, and it's also financial abuse that could possibly be taking, right? With that being said, we will be continuing this discussion, especially this discussion that needs to be had in this day and time. And while we keep that in mind, let's just go for a small break and be back on the social roundup with Sala right here.
One of the easiest ways to increase your net worth is to ensure that you have higher cash flows. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to not buy things on hire purchase, not buy things over months and months because you can't afford them now, but you want it. It's kind of that delayed gratification. Rather than buy that couch, that car, that stereo, that computer, whatever item, and pay it off over 12, 24, 36 months at an interest rate, rather invest that money, make do with what you've got, and then after 12, 24, 36 months, take the money that you've now invested and buy that good. An asset could be anything that appreciates or reduces a tax bill. So it could still be a liability, but it reduces their tax bill. And I'm not going to go into the technicalities because that's out of our remit here. However, for our use or our purpose, what we are talking for the listeners here is I would put this definition of an asset forward. An asset is anything that increases your income. Anything.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out during a day, if you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods. They're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends, and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if that, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK.
Welcome back to the Social Roundup with Sala right here on Relaks Radio. We've been having some interesting discussions and we're always here for you 24/7, giving you content that you are going to absolutely love. So follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our app to stay tuned with us, and do let us know what you'd love to hear from us, what you want, what kind of content you want, and engage with us. Do feel free to comment and let us know what you think about our content as well. With that being said, we've been talking about something that is really, really important in this day and time, which is domestic violence, right? Domestic violence, the numbers have increased during lockdown, and there has been 12% increase in the number of domestic abuse cases referred to a victim support just in mid-May 2020, right? And these are the data given by the National Office for National Statistics as well, which is something we need to be taking seriously, right? Between April and June 2020, there was a 65% increase in calls to the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, which is something that we need to be taking very, very seriously. And this is compared to the first 3 months of that year, which is January to March 2020, right? Which shows us that ultimately the cases are on the increase, the numbers are on the increase, and we need to be doing whatever it takes in our power to be addressing and fixing this situation. So look out for your loved ones, look out for your friends, your siblings, your relatives, yourself even, because sometimes we tend to ignore the domestic abuse that we are subjected to as well, right? So make sure that you are taking care of yourself and you are looking out for your loved ones and you are looking out for people in general, and passing on the message about how important it is for us to address this problem as well, right? The Domestic Abuse Act has also come into force on 29th April 2021 to make a change to better protect survivors of domestic abuse and strengthen measures to address the behavior of perpetrators as well. And this means that ultimately organizations such as Refuge and Women's Aid have also taken this act into consideration, welcomed it to better help victims of domestic violence. So you do not have to worry about anything, to be honest, because ultimately there are things that the government is doing, and there are things that are done by organizations and the communities are doing. Even online there has been a lot of support that has been raised for domestic violence victims, right? We saw a lot of trends come up where basically if you are a victim and you are video calling, or if you are making a TikTok to show your hand and show that just simple things, right? You do not have to verbally say it out loud, you just have to show your hand and say make a sign, and that basically means that you are facing domestic abuse and your viewers will take action to address this problem, right? So make sure you're doing whatever it takes to show people that you are facing domestic abuse, because ultimately we can get support from outside. There are things that the government is doing, that the UK government is doing to address this problem as well, right? So keep that in mind and feel safe to share your story, feel safe with people so that you can be addressing your problems. With that being said, let's move into how this crisis, how lockdown has really impacted domestic violence as well, how the rates have increased, right? We see that ultimately whatever happens, COVID-19 has resulted in increase in intimate partner violence due to lockdown and curfews, because you are stuck in your household, you are stuck with your partner, and you have no choice but to stay with them. Right now, sometimes you've been stuck inside for months, which means that you have no escape, right? This is, ultimately putting so much pressure on you to not open your mouth, because you feel like you cannot get support at a time like this, right? You cannot go to a friend's house, you cannot go to a family member's house, and you also feel like, officials are busy addressing the lockdown situation in itself, right? COVID-19 in itself. How are they going to be addressing your problem as well, right? How are they going to be addressing the fact that you are facing domestic violence? Now, just because you are having all these thoughts running through your head doesn't mean that it is true. Trust me, you have support. We spoke about the Domestic Abuse Act that has been enacted, and so you have the support from the officials, from the government in itself. And so feel free to open up and talk about your problem. Tell them how you feel. Right now, I was watching a video a couple of days ago about how a girl, calls up the police, and she says, I need to make an order, I need to order pizza, right? And the police officer is like, ma'am, are you serious? Are you kidding? You're ordering pizza, you're calling the police, right? And she's like, no, I'm serious, I need to order a pizza, right? And the police officer kind of gets the hint, well, look, this girl is calling and she's very persistent on getting a pizza, but she doesn't sound right? She's like, no, I'm trying to order pizza, so yeah, can you please take my order? And she starts giving her address. Then the police officer realizes, what, maybe there is a situation at her house, which is why she's calling the police, and she's pretending to order pizza, because the obviously whoever is keeping her back at home and whoever is abusing her is definitely, going to harm her, going to hurt her if she were to call the police and say, look, someone is hurting me, right? So instead, she says that she's ordering pizza, and the police officer sends over the police to her house, and they're able to save her from the abuser, right? So these are options that are available for you as well. These are things that you can think about. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to call up someone and tell them, look, I'm being abused, because we know that it's not ultimately safe to say that when there is an abuser in the house who's constantly watching you, controlling your life, controlling every move of yours, right? So do be very, very careful, right? Another thing is that ultimately, due to restrictions on movement, you are also scared that you yourself cannot escape, right? You yourself will get caught to the controller, the abuser, when trying to escape. And this ultimately will mean that, if you were to leave the house, one is that within the household, when you're trying to escape, the controller will do whatever it takes to stop you. And number two is that, when you are to leave the house, what happens is that, outside, you have the police hold you accountable for, breaking lockdown or curfew rules, right? So please don't be scared about that, because that is something that, you need to worry about after that. So when you do step out, do tell the police officer what you are facing at home, and they will give you that support. They will make sure that you feel safe, and that, ultimately you are taken care of, right? So don't worry about that as well, right? And if you do see red flags, like we spoke about this in your relationship with your intimate partner, do be very, very careful, and understand that no one would hurt anyone if they were to love them, right? Hurting someone doesn't mean that you love them. In fact, it means that they are possessive, that they are not okay mentally, they're not mentally fit or ready to have someone in their life, and to have that healthy relationship with someone as well, right? Something we need to keep in mind is that ultimately abusers want control, right? A frequently missed red flag is the attempt to control another person's life, with where they go, who they hang out with, or who they speak to, or even with things like what they spend money on, how much of freedom they have. Things like this could be a concern, and you need to be very careful. Someone becoming possessive, controlling, and jealous of your life, of who you are with, is a problem, right? And if they have become abusive physically and mentally, emotionally, make sure that you are taking whatever it takes to get rid of this person from your life, right? And this could simply mean that, there would be subtle hints of them, showing up at random places where you are hanging out with someone, and watching you, stalking you when you are with other people. These are all symptoms of someone being controlling over your life. You do not want to be with a partner who is that controlling over your life, because this could ultimately mean in the future that they would be super controlling and become abusive as well, right? these actions indirectly communicate that the partner can show up at any time, giving the sense that they are omnipresent, right? Which means that they're constantly watching you and that they're constantly in control of what you do, which is not healthy at all, right? So make sure that you are looking out for the signs, looking out for signs in your partner of them being an abuser who is controlling as well, right? So make sure you do that. Another thing is that, ultimately isolation is also very dangerous, right? During these times it is very hard, it is absolutely hard for us to get support from outside, because we are stuck at home, because we are stuck with this person. And sometimes even when you are by yourself at home, when you don't have access to your phone, when they do not give you access to your phones or any devices, or you're simply by yourself, right? That could really really be bad for you, because that is also meaning that this person is isolating you simply to make you more of a victim. The chances of you being a victim are higher because you are alone, because you are losing more and more control, right? Abusive people do what they can to isolate the one who is being abused, and this is because of how vulnerable you become in that situation, right? They will try to cut people off of your life, they will try to cut your loved ones, they will isolate you, they will make sure you do not hang out with your family or your friends, they won't even let you call your co-workers, they'll try to make you stop working and from continuing your studies. They do not give you enough attention, and they'll make sure that you maintain distance and isolate yourself from work, from things that you enjoy in life, and also people in general, right? By stripping away you from all these things that make you happy, and from other relationships as well, they're making you very very dependent on them, and making you dependent on them means that they are in much more control of your life, right? With that being said, there is so much more that we need to be discussing about domestic abuse. Everything you need to know about domestic abuse, questions that you have, questions that are not addressed. And if you do have any other questions, do comment on our Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and even TikTok, right? Tell us what you have, what are your questions for us, and what do you want us to be talking about, and how can we help you with these situations as well. With that being said, we're going in for a small break. We'll be right back here on the Social Roundup with Sala, talking more about other questions that we have about domestic abuse.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no, if that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you how did I do? Or you didn't do very well, and they get upset. And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young, well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, he'd say to me, you had one to forget. That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, you had one to forget. Get over it. And that was it. So I dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much. A lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday. And what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be, so that there's a goal, and then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this basic cash flow projection calculations. And it's what we use in financial planning all the time. What we say to clients is we say, okay, what is your goal? What is your objective? Where do you want to go to? And we discuss that in a lot of detail and over most of the meeting. And then the rest of it is saying, okay, in your exact circumstances, with your risk profile, with how you feel about investments and pensions and taxes and where you are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education or how involved you want to be. There's a lot of variables that we take into account. And then we say, okay, here's a plan. You start like this, that's great. And then we review it all the time. And we say, okay, we need to increase it, we're on track, we're not, this is what is happening. Because remember, when you're dealing with assets, the valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's a struggle. Yeah. So there are strategies everywhere from £50 a week up to £100 million, and they're different. Right? They range differently from everyone, but and from country to country, to be fair. Different countries have different tax laws, so different vehicles. But from your point of view, at the sort of normal end, I'm not going to call it the low end because I'm in that boat as well. It's as tax efficient as you can get it. That's where you start. You use all the tax efficiencies, and then you step up into different things.
Welcome back to the Social Roundup with Sala right here on Relaks Radio. We are here to give you content ranging from entertainment, sports, social issues, current affairs, to business, to self-love, to much more, right? And if there's anything that you are looking for, something that you want us to talk about, do feel free to comment and let us know. And meanwhile, also engage in these conversations with us, because we'd love to have your input here, right here on Relaks Radio as well. Now, we've been talking about something that is really important, which is domestic violence, because this is something that is becoming a pressing issue during lockdown as well, right? We spoke about what could be possible signs of someone who is a victim of domestic abuse, but we also spoke about what this abuser could possibly be putting you through as well, right? So on that note, we also have a couple more things that we need to be addressing when it comes to the abuser. of which one is emotional manipulation is sneaky, right? The abuser will always make you feel like you are not being abused, and that is just how it is, right? Sometimes you might be feeling like, they're doing it out of love, they're doing it because they care for us, they don't want us to get into trouble, they don't want us to get hurt, which is why they're getting so controlling over our life. But that isn't the case, right? You have your freedom, your inherent freedom. Someone who loves you, someone who cares for you would give you that freedom, understand that you have to use that freedom right? Not all abuses are presently dominating or demanding as well. It could be very subtle, right? They could be kind to you, but while being kind, they could be saying things, or they could be doing things that could be very, very abusive to you, right? While some are aggressive and blame their partner for their wrongdoing, others manipulate them in different ways, right? So we need to understand that not all forms of abuse and manipulation is the common methods that are to be seen out there, right? It is not the same methods. It's not always obvious to the eye. It can be very, very subtle as well, right? Some may behave as though they're sad and insecure, in need of a lot of attention, and so, forcing you to give them that attention as well. So they could guilt trip you into giving them that attention, guilt trip you into attending to them, and cutting everyone else out of your life as well, right? And in most situations, we see a lot of partners give up on their life, give up on other relationships, work that they do, with their studies, with their passions, and then completely focus on this abusive partner who is becoming more and more controlling and abusive over time, right? So we need to be careful of that sort of behavior, because it could be subtle, because it could be, you them guilt tripping you into doing it as well, right? Some may see this person as pathetic and pitiful as well, and thereby missing the possibility of them being a manipulator, of them being, manipulating them into doing this as well. So we have to be careful about this situation as well, right? And the truth is, financial manipulation can trap you, right? And when it traps you, it's going to be really hard for you to come out of that situation. It is going to be really hard for you to address the problem at its root cause and get out of it, because you are powerless, to be honest, right? Abusers often try to take control over your money, and that makes it difficult for you to function on your own, to leave the house when you want to buy the things that you want to be buying as well, right? And they may even insist on sharing bank accounts, monitoring transactions as well, which is very toxic, right? Ultimately, them financially controlling your life isn't something that should be happening, right? And they might also discourage you to, like we've spoken about, discourage you to work, right? Making you completely dependent on the abuser's income and, on their support as well, right? This makes you ultimately completely under their control, right? Now, another thing that we need to be talking about is, we spoke about how there could be symptoms of a person, right? Them being closed off, them having bruises, injuries that could mean that they are facing domestic abuse at home, right? But we also need to understand that friends and family members could also miss these red flags, right? There are usual signs that we would be missing, and this could mean that, ultimately we're not helping this person out of this situation, right? Because of the controlling behavior, sometimes we might not even get to spend time with our family and friends, which makes us think, oh, they're so obsessed with their partner, they don't even have time for us. Or you might even be thinking that they're happy and they're, living their life, which means that, they are not facing any sort of abuse. But this could be exactly the opposite, right? So make sure that you are not missing these signs. And if you see someone withdrawing themselves and they're not involved, the ideal, I know that, it could possibly mean that they're having fun, or that they're happy with their partner, but this doesn't mean that you do not check up on them. Especially, if you know this person and it's not normal behavior for them to do that, do check up on them, right? Now, another thing that we need to take into consideration is that leaving is complicated. It's not going to be easy to leave, right? As much as we can say just leave, it's not easy, because this person is controlling emotionally, and sometimes they might make you feel like, you cannot do anything if you are by yourself. You might fear going out into the world and working, because you haven't worked in so long and this person has provided you with all the financial support you need. You might be scared about communicating with people, because this person has always been the only one you have communicated with. and that means that you are scared, you are completely dependent on someone, and it's going to be hard. It is definitely going to be hard for you to become independent again, right? And this person needs a window of opportunity, a safe place to go to, and money to sustain themselves, so that they do not feel like they have to depend on this person completely, right? So make sure that you are doing everything in your power to help them, to give them that support, to give them that support while they somehow manage to get back on track as well, right? So make sure you do that if you are someone that this person knows, right? Definitely call the police, and call those in power. We spoke about how Women's Aid is also offering that support to victims in the UK, so you can definitely call them up and get that support that you need as well, right? Now, there are certain things that we need to be addressing when it comes to questions that we may be having about domestic abuse, because ultimately it's not an easy process, and it is something that we tend to have a lot of doubts about, right? So let's look into some questions that we would possibly have on domestic abuse and what the possible answers to them could be, right? The first thing would definitely be, do people who suffer domestic violence leave? Now, in most situations we would love for them to leave. That is exactly what they should be leaving, but the truth is a lot of people do not leave. They tolerate that behavior and they stay back, which is very, very, very unhealthy for them, right? And this is not something that we should be okay with. This is not something that we should be putting up with. If someone is staying back at home for financial security, or because simply them saying, look, I love this person and I know that this person is doing it out of love for me, that isn't an excuse. We also have situations in which a partner would stay back at home simply because they're dependent on them, and their child is dependent on this adult as well, right? On their partner as well. Now, as much as that situation is an unescapable situation, unescapable, is that a word? But a situation that you cannot escape from, we need to make sure that we do whatever it takes to take care of ourselves before we sort of put up with that sort of behavior as well, right? So we need to make sure whatever it takes to protect ourselves and our child, because if someone is abusing us, that could possibly mean that they are also comfortable abusing our child, right? Which means we're putting our child in danger as well. We're putting ourselves and our child in danger in the hands of our partner, who is becoming more and more controlling and abusive. So do what it takes to protect yourself as well as your child, and stay away from such situations. Now, as much as it's like I said, even though it's easier said than done, do make sure whatever it takes to get that extra support and help for you to leave as well, right? The next thing is, do victims face blame? Now, this is the truth. Ultimately, what people say is, after they get abused, people say, well, it's your fault you picked that partner, it's your fault that you decided to stay with them, right? And sometimes victims feel like it is their fault. They say they deserve that sort of abuse, they deserve that sort of ill treatment because of some decision they've made, because ultimately the abuser is manipulating them emotionally, manipulating them into believing that what they did was wrong, and because of what they did was wrong, that it's okay to be punishing them, right? For example, we spoke about how the abuser could be saying, I'm feeling lonely, I'm not okay, I need your support right now, I need your attention right now, so stay back, I don't want you to be spending time with other relations, other friends of yours. And this could be making the victim feel like, well, I'm in the wrong, and that is why this person is emotionally abusing me. I haven't been there for them, and that is exactly what I should be doing, right? There are a lot of awes in this sort of situation, right? People feel embarrassed, and they also feel like they just have to deal with it, right? So address these situations. You don't have to worry about these things, these ohs, these questions, ifs and maybes you will have in your head. Just take the time to take a breather by yourself and think about this without the abuser. And this is not the case all the time. The abuser is constantly watching you, so try to reach out to someone as soon as you can, as whatever way is possible. Do reach out to someone and see if you can address the situation as well, right? Another thing is that is it all about the power of the abuser? This is a question that is constantly had, right? Now, see, it isn't about love and concern for a partner when someone is abusing them, right? It's about sometimes this abuser may be, feeling like it's not only about the power the abuser has over the victim, but also the control that the abuser has over the victim. Right now, we spoke about how financially they'd be controlling them. We spoke about how they could be, controlling their activities, what they do with their life, whether they work, whether they are, studying, whether they are going to be, out there enjoying time with their friends and parents or people that they know as well, right? So we need to understand that this control is something that we need to think about, right? And it may or may not be physical abuse, but it is still violence, and that is something we need to come to terms with, right? And the next thing is also, is responding with violence the answer to this? Now, this is something that comes up a lot. Do we teach women self-defense, or even men who face abuse, do we teach them self-defense? Is that going to be the right answer, right? Now, the truth is, there have been situations in which people have fought against domestic violence with self-defense or physically fighting them, right? And some situations have spoken about how it has got extreme and out of control as well. I was reading up on this case about a woman who, was exposed to physical violence, and she hit her partner back, right? And when she did hit her partner back, he got even more violent, and the torture that he put her through was much more serious, to the point where she was admitted in the hospital, right? So responding to violence with violence may not be the answer, especially if your partner is physically stronger than you, right? If the person who is putting you through abuse is physically stronger than you, then definitely responding to it with violence is not the way to go about it as well, right? So make sure that you are thinking about, somehow trying to contact someone who could possibly help you, right? Now, another thing that people have asked is, whether we should ask, or whether we should ask someone who has been through abuse, especially if you know them, if they're a friend, if they're a family member. Do we ask them, well, are you going through abuse? Do you need something to do, right? Do you need something for us to do as well? Now, number one to it is, you can always make them feel safe around you. You can make them feel safe and listen to what they have to tell you, right? Listen and believe your friend when they tell you that they are being exposed to domestic abuse, right? And do not get involved in their fights. Do not try to take sides in that situation. Do not even defend them with their partner, because when you are not going to be around, their partner is going to abuse them, right? Instead, call the police and offer them a safe place to stay in while the situation is being addressed, right? Offer them that financial support, that physical space that they can use, work that they could possibly do, and become independent through, so that they're not dependent on their abuser anymore, right? And this could basically mean that they have a safe space, they can come out, they would have that mentality to ultimately step out of this situation as well. That support is what they are looking for, right? Now, we need to understand that domestic abuse has been a serious issue over the years, but it has gotten worse over lockdown. It is something that we need to be addressing, and it is something that we need to look into, whether we are the victim, whether someone we love is the victim, whether a friend is the victim. It is something that we need to be addressing, right? So with that being said, we're going to go into a small break and come back, and we're going to wrap it up, because we're almost at the end of the show, and especially talking about domestic abuse, but we have more topics and more discussions coming up as well. So stay tuned with us. This is Sala on the Social Roundup.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out and during a day, you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. You buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that the rich pay less taxes, or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods, they're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if that, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value, it may still be doing quite a good thing.
Welcome back to the Social Roundup with Sala right here on Relaks Radio. We've been talking about a very important topic, which is domestic abuse, domestic violence during lockdown. It is something that we need to be addressing. It is something that we need to be doing something about, right? So if you are facing domestic abuse, or if you know of someone who is possibly showing symptoms, which we have discussed about as well, or if you know of an abuser who is also showing symptoms of a controller who's probably abusing someone at home, then do make sure that you contact someone who could possibly help with this situation as well. Call the police. Do not hesitate, right? Do not worry about anything, because the Domestic Abuse Act has been enacted and it is something that is functioning right now, and we see organizations coming up and taking the actions that are necessary to be addressing this problem as well, right? With that being said, it is something that we would love for you to engage with us and talk about as well. Tell us if we have missed something, or if there's something that you would love for us to discuss about as well. You can comment on our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube as well. Follow us on these apps, and you can even download our app on your phone, and you can tune in with us 24/7 on Relaks Radio, where we give you topics ranging from entertainment to sports to business, travel, self-love, social issues, current affairs, politics as well. There's much more. The list just keeps going, right? So do stay tuned with us, and we have an interesting topic coming up next as well. With that being said, this show is coming to an end. We have something interesting coming up next about studies. If you are a student or you're someone who is trying to pursue something in your education, then do stay tuned. This is Sala on the Social Roundup on Relaks Radio right here with you.